What's going on, everybody? As promised, episode 2 of the series of this T-Maxx restoration. I'm Eric, for those that don't know, and today is going to be the teardown episode. So, not a lot of chit-chat today. Let's get into it. We're going to start by taking this body off. Obviously, that needs to be replaced. What I'm doing is I have the exploded views. These are available on Traxxas' website. And basically, I'm just going to be highlighting every piece that needs to be replaced. I have my cardboard here. For those that work on cars and engines and things of that nature, you know this is where the screws are going to go. A little magnet thing here. And I bought this stand. It was like, $10 on Amazon. Nothing too serious. And I got my screwdriver set here. And let's get into it. I think I'm going to start by taking the front end off. So underneath there, that should be a couple Phillips head screws. And it turns out I'm already missing these lower chassis supports, so that's interesting. But let's get to it. So pretty much every nut and bolt in this truck has been sitting for the past 48 hours soaked in penetrating oil. So I shouldn't run into a whole lot of problems, but we'll see what happens. I've been surprised in the past. What I am afraid of is that the engine's going to be seized. I was already planning on doing a full overhaul of the engine, but we might have to actually go ahead and do a complete rebuild. All right, and there we go. We have separation of the chassis and the front and rear, although the rear wasn't my decision. All right, so we got done with the disassembly of the front end of the truck, and it was a lot more fucked up than I thought it was going to be. So it turns out that I have quite a few parts that need to be replaced, things that I didn't know were broken when I first tore into this. So no big deal. The good news is Traxxas is nice enough on their exploded views to include the part numbers, and everything's available online. In addition to that, I think I'm going to be doing a lot of upgrading. This is kind of a blessing in disguise because of all these plastic parts that snapped and need to be replaced, we're going to upgrade with aluminum. I really want to make this truck bulletproof, and I'm looking forward to that. So that'll be an unboxing video in a couple of days, and we'll see how that goes. So now that the front end is done, let's roll into the rear end. So now we got the front end and the rear end completely disassembled. They're just out of frame, all the parts here. I'll show that at the end. And the back wasn't too bad. You know, a couple pieces definitely need to be replaced. But like I said, if we're upgrading from plastic to aluminum, everything's going to come apart. Everything's going to get replaced. Now comes the fun part. Now we're going to be doing the chassis. So this is going to be a full engine and transmission removal. We're going to take out the fuel tank, all the servos, all the electronics, and we're going to go down to bare sheet metal, and we'll get started from there. Okay, so now that we have the entire truck disassembled, everything's organized and where it needs to be. I got the front end of the truck over there, I got the chassis components right here, and I have the rear end of the truck back here. I have all of my screws and bolts organized on this cardboard here. If you know, you know. And I have my exploded views printed out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to inventory everything that I took off the truck and go through the exploded views with my highlighter and figure out exactly what needs to be replaced. So let's get started. So first up, we have the front shocks. Now, if you can see, they're not supposed to be like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace all the shocks on this truck. All right. The back ones were in pretty good shape, but I'm not going to upgrade the front end and not the back. All right. So now we have the shocks. I noticed when I was taking off the skid plate here, this is completely snapped. The front is missing. So we're going to need a brand new skid plate. So we have that highlighted. Moving on to the control arms, we see that the left side is completely destroyed. All of this needs to be replaced. We have this upper control arm is completely snapped. We have the lower control arm is snapped on the mount where the bulkhead goes. But the passenger side is perfectly fine. But we're going to go ahead and replace all of that with aluminum as well. We're going to inspect the hubs. They appear to be good. I don't see any cracks or any damage. But I believe the kit that I'm buying has aluminum hubs anyway, so those are getting replaced. Looking at the bulkheads themselves, these are actually in decent shape. They got a couple scratches on them, but nothing is snapped, nothing is bent, nothing is broken. So these I'm actually going to leave alone. If the kit that I'm buying has aluminum bulkheads, hey, cool, we'll keep it. But we're going to leave that off for now. Shock tower, same thing. Somehow this survived the accident. I don't know why, because all of the weight is put onto this, but it seems to be in perfectly good shape. Moving on to the front bumper. The front bumper has seen better days. It's just really scraped up. It still works functionally, but I kind of want this to look all brand new. So we're going to go ahead and replace this. It also has this X brace in the middle that actually came apart in my hands. So we're going to go ahead and replace that. And then finally, the last thing we're going to look at is the differential and front axles. Everything seems to be spinning freely. I'm not seeing any issues with it. It doesn't feel like it's digging or anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, the internal components of this are just fine. The drive shafts aren't sheared off. Nothing is snapped. Nothing is cracked. And the U-joints seem to be perfectly free. So we're going to go ahead and leave this alone. If the kit has aluminum differential covers, hey, cool. But as of now, we don't need it. And moving on to the wheels and tires, we're not even going to discuss that. The wheels and tires are getting completely replaced. We're going to do belted tires and everything, so that's going to be cool. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the rear end here. We'll start with the shock tower, which again, a couple scratches on it. Doesn't seem to be really damaged, but we'll go ahead and keep that. The control arms, one of them is good, one of them I know is snapped, so these are going to have to get replaced. Moving on to the rear tie rods. I do know that one of these completely snapped off, and that's why that wheel was dragging. So these have to get replaced. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the bulkheads. I know the bulkheads need to be replaced because if those were intact, the rear end of the truck would still be attached to the chassis. So let's get a closer look at that. Both of these are completely snapped, and their parts that broke off are right here. So bulkheads definitely need to be replaced. Let's take a look at that rear skid plate. Although it's dirty, I don't see any actual damage on it. A couple scratches here and there, nothing I'm too concerned about. The metal's not warped, so we're going to leave this alone. If the kit comes with a metal skid plate, we'll upgrade. We'll go ahead and look at that rear bumper. Same as the front, completely scraped up, but structurally sound. I don't see any reason that it needs to be replaced, but we'll probably go ahead and do that as well, so I'll mark it down. And finally, for the rear end, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this rear differential. It is absolutely filthy. I don't know why, but let's see how it feels. I turn it, I see both axles are going. I see the axles are able to spin independently of each other, but they feel a little tight. So I might actually have to disassemble this and see what's going on inside. It may be that it has a bad seal on this rear end. It might just have to be cleaned. But we'll take a look at that. So we're going to mark this. We're going to table this till the next episode. And that's about it for the rear end. Let's go ahead and take a look at the chassis here. So the frame itself is actually warped pretty bad. So I'm going to look into getting an entire new frame. I don't know how that happened. It looks like it's been stepped on. But all of that from that one accident, it's pretty impressive. You'd think this would be a lot tougher. Let's take a look at the other components here. So if we're looking at the other components, I have 3 servos here. One of the servos is for steering, one of the servos is for fuel and brake, and the other servo is for the reverse gear. This is the steering servo in my hand now, and it seems like it moves without a problem. I don't see any problem with the linkage as far as anything damaged. Inspecting the wire, no frays, nothing cut. So we're going to go ahead and keep this. Being that it is the steering servo, I might look into upgrading it just so I have a little bit more of a beefier servo going on there. Up next is the reverse gear servo. This connects to the transmission and it connects to the switch on the side of the controller. When you flip that, it'll put the truck into reverse. Looking at the mount, doesn't seem that the mount is damaged in any way. The wire doesn't have any frays or cuts, so this should be fine. Looking at the connection rod between the servo and the transmission, it moves freely. No issues with that. The spring is intact and it's clean. So we'll go ahead and hold on to that. And the last servo that we're going to look at is the gas and brake servo. This actually connects to the transmission on one side to activate the disc brake, and it connects to the other side to the throttle body, and this is how the truck stops and goes. So we're going to look at this servo. We're going to make sure again that the wire doesn't have any damage to it. It's not frayed, it's not twisted too bad. I don't see any nicks or cuts in it. All right, the mount is solid. I don't see anything snapped. All 4 post holes are good. The servo itself spins, right? I do see a bend in the rod that connects to the throttle body. I don't know if that's something I should be concerned about. We're going to jot that down just in case. We're not going to replace this whole servo, but we're going to look into getting a new rod for that. We're going to take a look at the battery box. Obviously, the battery box connects to the receiver, and this is what all of those servos get power from. So we need to make sure that nothing in here is frayed. Nothing here is broken. We're going to inspect this wire, make sure the connector is good. We'll go ahead and actually pull the battery holder out of the box itself. And we'll take a look at that. And I already see that on the positive lead, I have a frayed wire. So we're going to go ahead and replace this whole thing. That's not worth the risk. We're going to take a look at the receiver box and the receiver itself. And, you know, obviously this is very important. This is how the truck communicates with the controller. I'm looking at that antenna wire, which I have wrapped around. I guess I did that before I put it away. And yeah, I'm not seeing anything too bad with this. The crystal seems to be intact. We'll go ahead and pull that out and just look at it. And yeah, everything looks good. So we'll hold on to this. Save myself a couple of dollars there. The box itself, not seeing any issues with. And yeah, all right, that's good. We'll take a look at this fuel tank. I don't foresee any problems with the fuel tank other than it definitely needs a good cleaning. I do see a little bit of old fuel in the bottom gummed up, we'll go ahead and replace these lines, replace that fuel filter. But the tank itself still opens. Doesn't smell like anything. So we'll hold on to that. It just needs a good cleaning. The muffler, again, just needs a good cleaning. Maybe we'll run some water through it, run some solvent through it, just to make sure everything's clean inside. I can't see any reason that this would have been damaged from the accident. There's no dents, there's no dings, there's no scratches. So this just needs a good cleaning. We're going to take a look at the transmission here. Now the transmission is arguably the most important part of the vehicle aside from the engine. So we're going to take a real good look at this. We're going to make sure that those U-joints still rotate freely on both sides. They do. The flywheel, as I spin it, everything feels fine inside. I'm not feeling any grinding or anything like that. The brake lever, we're going to inspect that, make sure it moves freely. We're going to take a visual inspection of the brake pad itself. This is a little old. It could probably use replacement. So we'll put that on the list. And as far as the transmission itself goes, everything feels fine with it. Everything spins freely, so I'm happy with that. All right, finally, the moment everyone's been waiting for, the engine. So as I mentioned in the previous video, when I first got this truck when I was 13 years old, it was a 2.5. I upgraded to the Traxxas 3.3, and this engine could run. But like I said, after the accident, the truck's been sitting on a shelf for 16 years. Before I put it away, I didn't do anything to the engine. I didn't put any WD-40 in the cylinder head. I didn't take the glow plug out. I didn't do anything. All I did was drain the fuel tank. So the other day, I came downstairs and I took the glow plug out, and sure enough, the engine was seized. So it's been sitting for the past 2 days with some penetrating oil, both in the throttle body, up into the head, and in the cylinder. So let's hope for the best here. I'm going to try to spin the flywheel and see what we get. And the flywheel is spinning freely. I hear compression. Let's see what we got. I'll take that as a result. Looks like I don't have to replace the engine, so that makes me very happy. So I hope you enjoyed the disassembly video. Up next, we're going to go purchase some parts, and the next video in this series is going to be the unboxing. Stick around.